From World War I profits to World War II's nuclear monopoly, the U.S. turned crisis into power. Today, it arms Ukraine while pressuring Venezuela. But what if Caracas becomes the next Japan, backed by nuclear allies? Welcome to Timeless Hub, where history's lessons shape today's wealth, geopolitics, and future growth.
From the arms boom of World War I all the way to the nuclear finale of World War II, the United States perfected a really powerful global strategy. And today, when you look at the headlines, the U.S. being the top arms supplier to Ukraine, pressure mounting on Venezuela, you can't help but feel like we're seeing echoes of the past. So yeah, let's dive right into this.
So here's the big question we're tackling. Is the U.S. basically dusting off an old, very successful playbook? And maybe more importantly, what happens when you use that playbook, one designed for a completely different time, in a world that's now armed to the teeth with nuclear weapons? What are the risks? To really get what's happening now, we've got to rewind the clock. So let's break down the historical strategy that helped make America a superpower. And the core of it was this: profit from a conflict long before you ever send your own troops to fight. Okay, so the whole thing hinges on this key concept, the arsenal of democracy. And you have to understand, this is so much more than just selling weapons. It's a calculated, full-blown strategy. You stay officially neutral, but you become the primary factory and the primary bank for your allies. You build up immense economic power, all while other countries do the fighting. The game plan was simple. Profit and leverage first, combat comes much, much later, if at all. And this pattern is just crystal clear when you look at the history. In World War I, the U.S. was the main lender and supplier to the Allies for years before it joined the fight. Fast forward to World War II, and it's the exact same script, just with a new name, the Land-Lease Act. Then comes the trigger, Pearl Harbor, and everything changes. The U.S. goes all in, and it ends the war holding the ultimate trump card, a complete monopoly on nuclear weapons. Now, this whole experience taught a generation of American leaders a very simple, very powerful lesson. The big takeaway from 1945 was that if you push the United States too far, it has the capacity to escalate in a way no one else on the planet can. And it can end a war entirely on its own terms. Okay, so let's jump from the history books to the present day. Because that same strategic DNA, that idea of supplying your allies and building leverage, you can see it playing out right now, all over the world.
The parallel is really striking. Back in the 1940s, it was Lend-Lease. Today, the U.S. is the indispensable source for Ukraine's most advanced weapons, things like HIMARS and Patriot missiles, not to mention all the financial aid. Officially, Washington is calling for a diplomatic solution. But unofficially, defense contractors are booming, and American influence in Europe is stronger than it's been in decades.
But the story doesn't stop in Europe. Not at all. At the very same time, Washington is looking much, much closer to home, at what it's always considered its own backyard. We're talking about Venezuela.
And Venezuela is a geopolitical powder keg. It's got vast oil reserves, but it's stuck in a deep crisis, and it's under heavy U.S. sanctions. And here's the really crucial part. Right on America's doorstep, its biggest rivals, Russia, China, Iran, are all making inroads, offering loans, technology, and weapons. This is the exact kind of modern flashpoint that really tests that old playbook. And this brings us right to the heart of our analysis. The playbook might look familiar, but the game board itself, the world we live in, has fundamentally changed. And trying to apply 1940s logic to today's problems, well, that is incredibly dangerous.
There are three huge differences. First, and this is the most important one, the U.S. no longer has a nuclear monopoly. Russia and China are nuclear powers. That means deterrence is a two-way street now. Second, the global economy is just so deeply intertwined. A major war would shatter supply chains for absolutely everyone. And third, managing escalation is a total nightmare in a 24/7 news cycle that's dominated by information warfare.
So, let's ask a chilling, hypothetical question, just based on what's happening with Venezuela. What happens if a smaller nation, feeling cornered but knowing it's backed by a nuclear power like Russia, decides to cross a red line and actually strike U.S. assets? It wouldn't be Pearl Harbor. No, it would be something far more complex, maybe like a new Cuban Missile Crisis.
And this really shows you just how different the response would have to be. In 1945, an attack meant a declaration of total war, and the nuclear option was on the table. Today, the response would more likely be a mix of sanctions, maybe a naval blockade, and a ton of intense diplomacy. The risk of mutual destruction just makes those old decisive moves almost unthinkable. The options are just far more limited. So what does this all mean for us? Let's talk about the consequences of trying to run an old play in a new game. And let's look at where the real risks, and yes, the opportunities, actually lie.
Well, the dangers of a miscalculation are very, very real. A proxy war could easily spiral into a direct conflict. We could see energy markets completely seize up, causing prices to skyrocket. Inflation and migration could surge across the globe. And you could see rival blocs like BRICS using the chaos to accelerate their challenge to the current world order. Sure, defense companies might do very well, but public budgets will be strained to the breaking point.
But here's the takeaway that really matters for anyone interested in the future of wealth and business. History shows us that major crises reliably do two things. They accelerate technological innovation, and they redistribute wealth on a massive scale.
And we can see this happening right now. The war in Ukraine is driving a revolution in drone technology and cyber defense. The energy crisis is forcing everyone to fast-track diversification into new sources of power, and all these disruptions are making companies completely rethink their global supply chains. Spotting these shifts is absolutely key.
So we're left with this one final thought. We're living in a world with 21st century weapons, but we're often guided by 20th century strategic instincts. And in that volatile mix, the greatest danger might not be some grand plan for war, but just a simple, tragic miscalculation that spirals completely out of control.
Geopolitics and future growth.